I'm Barbara Paldus, and I'm the founder and CEO of Codex Labs. I've spent the last 2 decades building technology in areas ranging from climate monitoring to biotechnology. I've been awarded over 50 patents. And at some point, though, I realized that I could bring a scientific and biotech approach into dermatology and skin health because my son had eczema. Codex Labs, my current company, was founded in Silicon Valley in 2018, and we're essentially a plant biotech company. We use plant biotech-derived ingredients that's focused on core 4 diseases like eczema, acne, rosacea, and psoriasis through a whole body approach that's based on skin, gut, brain biome health. So we're focused not only on microbiome supporting products, skincare, supplements, but also dermatology solutions because patient guidance is part of that journey. After we launched some of our products, specifically for acne, we started realizing that dermatology is far more complicated, and it's not simply recommending a patient here take the skincare or take the supplement and everything is fine. In fact, the patient needs guidance, the patient needs advice, and it may be more complicated in that the patient needs to do diagnostic testing. So sometimes people have to wait for 6 months to get an appointment. There's a lot of competition. And often in private practices, which have been aggregated by private equity, it's very difficult to find a dermatologist who isn't really focused on aesthetics. So that's where we started looking at bringing dermatology solutions through telehealth into the market, because a lot of the main telehealth platforms also didn't have dermatologists. You could talk to a pediatrician, you could talk to a nurse practitioner, but actually getting to someone who was specialized in skin, let alone someone who would take a whole body approach, was next to impossible. So the idea was simple. Basically, connect patients with professional skin providers through their phone, through their computer, to make access to care fast and more convenient. So that's how we came up with the concept of the teledermatology platform Decode Me. We worked with a couple of vendors prior to finding Cleveroad, but we were never really even able to get, I would call it, a base foundational version to do a demonstration, let alone to sign up a provider. Every time we had missed deadlines, there were many bugs, technical errors, the communication wasn't ideal. So at that point, I would say around the end of 2024, we were pretty desperate to find a reliable development partner who could get us ready by the end of 2025, at least for beta testing. And so that's how we were able to find Cleveroad. You know, the goals that we originally communicated were very clear. We did have an existing code base. We needed that to be reviewed. We needed a gap analysis. We needed to understand the level of bugs, basically what was wrong, and not only stabilize it, scale it, but also add a lot of missing features. The goal of this accelerated development was initially to come up with a stable demo that we could in fact show to dermatologists in March of 2025 at the American Academy of Dermatology. So we had less than 6 months to do this. And of course, in the long run, before launching the platform, it had to pass HIPAA compliance, which we obviously communicated as non-negotiable, and very few software development groups that we spoke with were capable of doing that. So as I mentioned, we started with a vendor in India, then we moved to a vendor in the United States who used programmers in Latin America. And so Cleveroad was actually the third vendor that we brought in to, hopefully third time being the charm, to really get Decode Me up and running. By that time, we knew exactly what we were looking for. And part of how we found them was we were searching for development teams with experience in healthcare, a good reputation online, but most importantly, HIPAA compliant experience, which was critical, as I mentioned. From the beginning, I would say Cleveroad's team showed a very high level that was focused on the customer from the first conversation, as well as on achieving results. They weren't just nodding along saying yes, 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 and then not going to deliver. They listened, they asked the right questions, they wanted to do an audit up front, and they clearly understood the pain points that we were stuck with because we weren't the first customer approaching them in this situation. What impressed us was the first thing that we did was a solution design workshop. They brought in their solution architect and business analyst. They presented the results of a focused technical assessment of our code. And so we started to understand where we were relative to where we wanted to be. Then we had a very, I would say, detailed step-by-step plan that would be utilized to stabilize the platform from, say, September, October of 2024 to March of 2025, and then prepare it for additional features and future growth. So what we appreciated was this mix of structured thinking, compliance expertise, project management, and practical solutions that gave us the confidence that we'd finally found the right partner. So I probably can't give you an exact count because there were many, many challenges that they had to solve, and some challenges that weren't even identified in the original audit that came up, 2-3 months into the project. But first, they did run a full assessment of this code, and they did a code review to understand the state of the state that had been left by the previous vendors. It was like rediscovering Troy. From there, they made a plan to fix the top critical bugs. And then they had to go and do a lot of work in terms of revisiting and optimizing the backend because the platform was not stable and we needed it to run without collapsing. As I mentioned, it was a 6-month deadline to the American Academy of Dermatology first meeting. So there were only 5 months really by the time we were done with the audit to assess, fix, and get a working demo ready. They did bring in extra hands. We restructured a lot of the backend. And what was great was that by the end of February, beginning of March, right before the conference, they delivered a stable version of Decode that we were able to present at the event to dermatologists for feedback. And then I would say compliance. Since we were so clear and so insistent on HIPAA, Cleveroad actually proposed a secure setup for development and production, which would allow us iteration without actually touching PHI, the personal health information, which is the sensitive patient data, using GCP Fire for storage. And they also built secure infrastructure for privacy-safe virtual doctor-patient consultations. We did have to change out some of the apps that previous group had selected, but in the end, as a result, we were ready for demo release, and then we did pass the initial certification stage. So what I would say is a highlight for me and that I appreciate the most is Cleveroad's commitment and resource flexibility, as well as their deep technical expertise. Obviously, my team is in California, and they're based in Eastern Europe. So there's a little bit of there's a 9 to 10 hour time zone difference. But they were always available when it mattered, whether when, for example, we had the Academy of Dermatology conference, they worked weekends, they worked evenings. Many times when we had a provider who we were onboarding, they would stay very late just to make it happen and to be ready on time. So that to me demonstrated a very rare level of dedication, which again, we appreciate very much. As I mentioned, the conference launch went smoothly. We were able to get the feedback we wanted, and they even stayed on standby during the entire weekend to make sure nothing blew up. After that, they kept on basically moving fast on the user feedback. We did have to add additional features. There were, again, some other things that we had to rework because certain platforms were incorrectly chosen by the previous group. And so we continued to sync the work with our company milestones. And so I would ask, anytime that we needed something extra, whether, that was additional resources or fewer resources or change in resources, or an unexpected meeting, or a report that we needed to provide to our board of directors, they responded very quickly and with multiple options, which was great. So that to me was the most impressive, that their flexibility and their commitment to the project. Absolutely. I would say I have no hesitation to say that Cleveroad has been reliable, skilled, and transparent. Pretty much all the things you want in a tech partner. But to us, what was most important was their healthcare expertise, especially their understanding of compliance, how to treat sensitive medical data like PHI, the seriousness about treating it, as well as carrying the responsibility for objective outcomes, basically code that works. I mean, I know it may sound simple, But for us, it had been several years with lots of bugs and code for demonstration that would fail. So we had a lot of PTSD coming into this project. And so the seriousness and the responsibility that Cleveroad demonstrated over the last year has really helped us overcome that PTSD. And what we were very appreciative was their investment in the product success and in getting this platform out there. They weren't just coding, they were real partners, proactive, practical, and as fast as possible. So I would recommend them to any healthcare company looking for a technical partner.